Welcome to the very first episode of Empowered Men. In this series, my aim is to dive deeper into the lives of some extraordinary men, coaches, leaders, and entrepreneurs, men who live their lives with strength, resilience, and purpose. It's my goal to bring you powerful conversations and to inspire you to level up in all areas of your life. I couldn't think of a better guest than my first guest today, Mr. Shaun Kober, aka Kobs. Hey Shaun.
Cheers, mate.
Nice
to be here.
You.
I'm looking forward to this, man.
Shaun is a military veteran. He was a sniper in the Australian Army, and he's been living here in Phuket for the last 8 years, where he works as a strength and conditioning coach and mindset and performance coach for professional fighters, elite athletes, and everyday men and women. He's coached some of the best fighters in the world, guys in the UFC such as Peter Yan, Bam Bam Tuivasa, and is currently working with Dennis Purick of ONE FC. But I'm not here today just to talk about the fighters. I'm here to dig deeper into Shaun's personal story, the story from his time in the Australian Army and what led him to being here as a strength and conditioning coach in Phuket, and how he lives his life as an empowered man. Let's dive in. So Shaun, I want to start with your time in the Army. And from someone who's been in the Army myself for a number of years, when you tell somebody that you've been in the military, the first thing they usually perceive is that you're a combat soldier, you're on the front line, you're on the battlefield. For a lot of people in the services, that's not quite the case. Like, a large part of the services are made up of support roles, logistical roles, communication roles. For you, you were that guy. You were the guy on the front line, you were the guy doing the nitty-gritty. And, I would estimate that would put you in the very top percentile of all members of the forces, like likely the top 1%, maybe even the top 0.1%, in what it takes to operate in the role that you operated in. So what I want to ask is, what led you to doing that role and actually becoming a sniper within the Army?
Well, I never actually planned on becoming a sniper. I joined the Army because I looked at it as a noble role, in service of others, wearing the uniform to, support others, support those who couldn't help themselves. So joining the Army was the main kind of driving force. And then what I was going to do in the Army, well, I had a couple of mates that were joining at the same time, and you watch the movies and you, as you said, you see people perceive soldiers as the foot soldiers, the combat soldiers on the ground, and that's what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
So becoming a sniper, it was a natural progression. I'm one of those guys I'm ambitious, so whatever I'm doing, I want to put my best foot forward. I want to present the best version of myself, no matter what arena I'm in. So, as I went through the ranks and the training cycles and courses and things like that, it was actually other people that noticed my tradecraft skills and fieldcraft skills and nominated me for the sniper's course. So I did the sniper's course. That was one of the most difficult courses I've ever done, one of the most difficult things I've done in my life. And there was a massive washout rate. We started with 20 of the best guys in the battalion, and then went through a 2-week pre-course where we essentially just got broken down. And then 7 of us started the course and 3 of us passed the course. So yeah, massive washout rate. But yeah, like I said, one of the most difficult courses, difficult things I've done in my life, but also one of the most rewarding things I've ever done.
So it wasn't necessarily something that you were striving to become, just the natural way that you progressed and people, your superiors, noticing those elements, those qualities within you.
Yeah. Well, my plan was to join Special Forces, so becoming an infantry soldier was a stepping stone then to, like I said, I'm ambitious. I want to be the best soldier that I could be, and that top echelon, the elite of soldiering is Special Forces, SAS commandos. So that was the goal when I first joined the Army, and then obviously as I was going through that process, I was recognised and nominated for Sniper's course. And I mean, I never actually became an SAS soldier or Special Forces soldier, and that's because the role that I stepped into as a sniper, deploying to, I was in Timor whilst I finished my sniper's course. We actually did some courses whilst we were on a deployment. And then deployed to Afghanistan as a sniper, and I achieved everything that I wanted to in the army at that point, and yeah, it was time for me to move on.
That's off to you, man. So some of the qualities that you would have needed as a sniper: patience, discipline, laser sharp focus at the absolute highest level. How do you apply some of these qualities into what you do now day to day?
Great question. It's just built into me now, to be honest. A lot of the things that I learned in the military, a lot of guys, when they get out of the military, they grow their hair long and, stop shaving and stop getting out of bed at a certain time and, try and kind of brush that side of their life out and try and, figure out who they are now and create their next character, I guess, to take on the next chapter. And I very soon realized that those things were serving me very well, so I reintegrated them and I use them daily now. I don't hit snooze button. I get up out of bed as soon as my alarm goes off. I make my bed every day. I don't shave every day now, but I feel those things are taught across militaries across the entire world for a reason. That this stuff's been around forever. It works, and it's beneficial. It works for me, man. It's beneficial for me, my life, my personal and professional development. So if it's good for me, I keep it in the system.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, again, I think there's a perception of military guys being like hyper disciplined, right? And for a certain time in their life, they are because they need to be. But oftentimes, when they're removed out of that environment, they can lose their discipline.
For sure.
Even for the guys that have really applied high level of discipline. So you've just essentially continued that into this new role. And that's essentially why you've gained such high success.
Yeah, it's just repackaging and repurposing those same principles. As a sniper, I'm working with a small 4-man team, so I need to trust both guys either side of me. I know that they've achieved the same standards that I have. They've gone through the same training that I have. I know I can trust them, and that gives you high standards, man. That's one of the things that I've had difficulty with since discharging from the army and working for other companies, along this journey over the last 13 years as a coach. I've had to dial back my standards at times to
people failing to live up to the standards that you set for yourself and you expect others.
Yeah, exactly. Especially in a leadership role, as a head coach at a big gym, I had to meet my coaches where they were at, rather than constantly, trying to pull them up to me. Sometimes I had to go back down to them and kind of bridge that gap and slowly, progressively, build them towards the standards that I expected from my coaches, essentially.
I understand that. However, I do imagine there are people that you work with that do raise themselves to those standards. Obviously, the fact that you've worked with some of the world's best fighters in the UFC, in ONE FC. However, you have coached hundreds, probably if not thousands, of lower level fighters.
Yeah.
What would you say is the thing that separates the good from the great fighters, like both physically and mentally?
That's a great question, because I've seen firsthand, I've been in the trenches here in Thailand, one of the meccas of combat sports in Muay Thai, and MMA is growing, Jiu-Jitsu is growing. The guys that show the highest level of professionalism are typically the ones that, go on to do amazing things, and you can see those qualities early on. They're always the first in the gym. They're, getting their bodies prepped, they're doing their movement preparation, soft tissue work, injury prevention, rehab, corrective exercise, etc. Then they practice some skill work, and then, as their teammates and friends and coaches and stuff roll in, then they start, integrating with them, and they're always the first to help other people out. sharing knowledge, slowing things down, explaining things, helping others. You know, you can always. They've also got some leadership qualities as well.
Yeah. So do you recognise that pretty early on with the guys that you work with?
For sure, man. That's it's one of the things that I look for in athletes is their ability to have an influence on those around them without even necessarily needing to speak. Yeah, those are the types of people that, you know, have good leadership qualities and, you know, and have the professionalism to, again, positively influence those around them.
So they focus not only on improving themselves, but they want to do it as a collective to help raise others as well. And that's,
absolutely.
You know, in terms of
absolutely.
Leadership.
Yeah, man. The you know, some of the highest level athletes and professional athletes I've seen, they just have a type of aura around them. Yeah. You know, as soon as they walk in the room and the way that they conduct themselves, the way that they present themselves, that positively influences everyone else and that raises them as well.
Yeah. Awesome. One thing
culture is everything, man.
Culture, yeah. And that's something that you're constantly trying to nurture?
Always. Yeah. I've been involved in a number of, you know, like I said, 4-man sniper teams, 12-man sniper cell. I've won 7 rugby premierships across, you know, 30 years of rugby. But, you know, something I've noticed in all of those successful teams is the culture that they have.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, again, on the flip side, the unsuccessful teams or the teams that have failed when it counts, you know, they've got a different culture and a different set of standards. So, you know, I've noticed some through lines through all of these successful teams across my journey as a rugby player, as an athlete, as a soldier, as a coach.
So all of these environments, you know, as an athlete yourself, as a soldier, and now working with, you know, elite high-level athletes, they're all pretty high-pressure environments, and they need a really high level of mental toughness. How do you personally stay grounded and avoid getting overwhelmed, essentially, when you're in these environments?
Great question. Not something that I was taught. Something that I've absorbed. You know, in Afghanistan, 2 weeks into our trip, our team was ambushed. My team leader was shot. You know, the next day we were out on patrol. Burst of machine gun fire went between my teammate and I, and we were back out on patrol the next day. And we're like, "Fuck, man, this is going to be a long trip." So, the first couple of weeks, man, I wasn't able to sleep. You know, and I was always running this what if scenarios in my mind, and it was burning me out. And I soon realized, as the lead scout for my sniper team, I was like, if I make a mistake, then the guy behind me takes the brunt of the explosion or gets hit or whatever, then, you know, that's going to be on my conscience for the rest of my life. So, you know, I started with counting sheep.
Really?
That didn't work. Yeah, man. Didn't work. And then I went to just counting breaths.
Yeah.
And I would just, over the next week or two, I was able to, you know, really dial in on the breath and limit my attention and focus to only what was within my control at that time, and that was my breath. You know, I couldn't think about what was happening tomorrow. I would, my brain would run off. I'd be 2 breaths in, my brain would run off. I'm like, oh, last time I went here, this happened, and how are we going to negate that? Yeah. And then I'd pull myself back and start again. 1, 2, 3, and over the next couple of weeks, I was able to, you know, calm my nerves, and, you know, I now know that I was driving the parasympathetic nervous system from the sympathetic state.
That's what I was going to ask. At that point, was that intentional? Was that something that you'd been taught or learned, or was that just your natural instinct in terms of finding that strategy for yourself?
That was, I just needed a strategy, and that was the one that kind of worked, and the one that I settled on. And it wasn't until many, many years later that, you know, I did learn about the autonomic nervous system and the interaction between the sympathetic state and the parasympathetic state, and then I was like, oh, that was actually meditation and breath work.
It's literal flight or flight, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yes, I did it.
the situation that you're in.
Yeah. So yes, I did do it intentionally, but it's not something that I was taught or learned or whatever. It's just something I guess I just kind of figured out. I was like, what's the one thing that I can focus on right now? Take my mind off this shit that I can't control.
And you think that's something that all men can apply into their lives?
Absolutely, man. I think breath work is one of the most powerful things that we have. We can influence physiology, but we can't cheat biology. I get up and I do my breath work every morning. It gives me an insight into, the state of my nervous system. This morning, for example, I take 20 breaths, and I try and kind of control that, even inhale, even exhale, nice and rhythmic, and then I'll time it. This morning took me like 4 minutes, 50 seconds, so I know that I'm in a little bit of a sympathetic state, and then when I check my data, it correlates. But then when I'm in more of a parasympathetic state, those breaths take a little bit longer. It might be 5:30 or something, so it gives me an indication of where I'm at, how much stress my system's under, how much I can, throw at my training today, what I might need to do with nutrition, recovery, sleep, etc.
And that's such an important thing, to be aware and to recognize that I think most men probably, they don't even consider, right? They're just going through their day and they're constantly in that fight or flight state. And even the smallest thing can trigger that fight or flight state. But they don't necessarily recognize it in themselves.
Yeah. I think, like I said before, I think breathwork is one of the most powerful things that we can utilize to influence physiology. If you are in traffic or whatever and someone cuts you off and you're about to explode, then take 3 deep breaths and just feel the effect that has on the body. I say this all the time to my clients. We can only live 4 minutes without oxygen. We can live 4 days without water, 40 days without food, 40 plus years without exercise. But people tend to focus on the exercise. And whilst exercise can influence the other things, definitely influences physiology in a positive manner, it can also influence physiology in a negative manner. If you're already overloaded with stress, you're in that sympathetic state, and then you go into the gym and you hit a heavy strength or power or speed session or whatever, sometimes that's just adding more damage to the system. Stress on stress. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, man, stress is absolutely essential for adaptation. It's necessary, right? But we also need to balance that out and go back into a parasympathetic state so then we can recover and adapt. Because the whole point of training is to get better at something. Progressively, periodically, over a long period of time.
Awesome. One thing that we haven't touched on yet is you were awarded the Commendation for Gallantry for acts under fire while you were in Afghanistan. That is an incredible achievement and is a real huge testament to your character, your resilience, and your courage as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about the circumstances around receiving that award and what it meant for you personally to be recognized in that way?
Yeah, thank you. I touched on it before, about 2 weeks into the trip, our sniper team being ambushed. So that was the first occasion. And then the second occasion was a few months later. I think it was 4th of January, a couple of days after we got shot at on New Year's Day, 2011. And then a couple of days later, we're out again and we got ambushed again. Another one of my teammates was shot. So for both of those acts on 2 different occasions, I was the lead scout, but I was also the combat first aider. So it was my role to deal with any threats, but also deal with any casualties that came up. Luckily, I didn't become a casualty. But yeah, man, I just did my job, dude. Honestly, I just did my job, and so did the guys either side of me. We were in a 4-man team. One dude was down, so there was only 3 of us left, and we just did what was necessary, man. When I actually got back from Australia and went and played rugby for a couple of months as a professional with the Australian Defence Force, Australian Services Rugby Union team, which was Army, Navy, Air Force, and went to New Zealand, played in a World Cup over there, Defence Force World Cup that was running in conjunction with the actual Rugby World Cup. So I got back from that trip, which was like 3 months after I got back from Afghanistan, and then I had a letter in the mail saying you've been nominated for a commendation for gallantry. So I didn't know about it, and then I went to and at that stage they said, the letter said I need to contact these people at this time, and that date had already passed. So then, I don't know, maybe it was like a month later or something, I was with my friends having a barbecue, and it just, I mentioned it. They asked me how the trip was and blah, 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 and I mentioned this commendation, and I told them the story, and they're like, "You need to call them, dude." I'm like, "Why? Like, it's already passed." Like, "No, man. Like, you need to be recognized for this, like, on behalf of the team." And I was like, "Well, that kind of makes sense." So I ended up calling them and said I'd like to accept the award on behalf of my teammates and, you know, all the guys on the base. And, you know, I didn't join the army to chase medals or, you know, fame, glory, whatever. You know, I just wanted to serve others. And like I said, shit happened. I did my job. The guys around me did their job. I was awarded, but I accepted on behalf of the team. So
yeah, I mean, again, huge credit to you. And like I said, that really is a testament to your character. And coming back to what we said earlier is the standards that you set yourself, right? The discipline that you imply, the standards you set yourself, the courage that you have to rise above. And I'm sure all those qualities are some great traits that you can pass down to some of the fighters that you're working with who are in battle in their own way, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I thought about this recently. I was essentially a combat athlete. You know, these guys are combat athletes. I was a combat athlete, but just in a different arena.
Yeah.
You know, could you imagine? I say this to my athletes, man. I'm like, could you imagine if you're just walking around one day and then someone just starts a fight and you need to be ready to go? An instant. I'm like, that's what I was doing, man. Constant, yeah, just needing to be ready to go on that knife's edge all the time. You know, so. I mentioned it before about the mindset and the discipline, and you know, I think that needs to be there to keep you sharp for long periods of time. But you also need to have that balance out period where things slow down, you start to unwind. And
so for the men out there who might have struggled in developing that discipline and might be struggling a little bit just with self-growth and development overall, what's the one piece of advice you would give them in order to help them level up?
Great question. If you're struggling on your own, reach out to a coach. Yeah. If you need that type of accountability and you just need that guidance to I mean, here's the thing, man, when it comes to personal and professional growth and development, there's so many different things that we can start adding to our plate. You know, and that's the last thing we want to do is add so many things onto our plate that we just can't do all of it all the time. So, you know, having a coach or being super aware of, you know, the one thing that's either slowing you down or the one thing that's going to help speed you up on your road to glory or your journey to wherever. You know, if you have someone that can guide you and just say, hey, don't worry about these 5 things, focus on this one thing, and then that's going to take care of all these other things. You know, that's probably the biggest thing that I could say. Set yourself daily wins. You know, if you can win the day majority of the time, you know, you win the week, you win the month, you win the year. That snowball effect, man.
Yeah, I just want to go back to the previous point, because I think that is something that a lot of men do struggle with. It's asking for that help, and that stigma of most men thinking that they can figure things out by themselves and go it alone. But just, you know, the impact that it has to put your hand up and say that I need help with this thing, and whether it's working with a coach or seeking some outside accountability, can really have a massive impact on everything, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why that was probably the first answer that came to my mind was, you know, if you're struggling with something, then reach out for help. Reach out to someone who's going to guide you on that process and cut through all the bullshit and you know, give you the answers that you're looking for, or at least provide direction so you can find the answers that you're looking for.
Awesome. Love it, mate. And then the final question I'm going to ask you is, what does it mean to you personally to be an empowered man?
To be an empowered man to me means taking ownership of your life, being accountable, being responsible, and, you know, just taking care of business that you need to in your personal circumstances. You know, whether you're a coach or a soldier, a father, a brother, whatever titles you give yourself, you know, doing the things necessary to fill your cup so that you can present yourself in the best best possible life.
Yeah, responsibility is massive, isn't it?
Massive, man, massive. I mean, one of my favorite books, and one of the books in my top 5 reading list is Jocko Willink. What's it called?
Extreme Ownership.
Extreme Ownership.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been a while since I've read it. But I've gone through it at least 2 or 3 times. But yeah, it's one of those books that's close to the top of my. It's definitely my top 5 reading list.
Yeah,
especially for guys.
just one of those ones that you can just revert back to, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly, man. And again, like taking ownership, it's gives you responsibility. It puts you in the driving seat.
Yeah.
You know, rather than that victim mentality of like, well, I can't do this because of this and that, and pointing the finger at other things. Like, it is what it is, man. So you just got to deal with the cards that you're dealt and crack on.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, mate, well, thank you so much for your time today. I think we'll wrap it up there. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to have this conversation.
Pleasure, mate.
If everybody watching wants to find out more about you, where can they do that?
Go to coach_Kobes or Live Train Perform on Instagram. I'm in the process of redoing my website. That'll be updated in the next couple of months, so I won't give that out. Actually, I'll give that out if people want to go and check it out. coachedbykobes.com. Live Train Perform on YouTube, and Live Train Perform is the podcast, which you've made a couple of appearances on. Yes, Shaun has got a really, really good podcast out there with over 100, 150 episodes. Yeah, 170 now. 170 with just constant. Rob's on 3 of them. Knowledge bombs. Definitely go and check that out. So if you did enjoy this conversation tonight, if any of this did resonate with you, let us know in the comments below. Let us know in particular which part you enjoyed watching. Don't forget to like this and subscribe to the channel. I look forward to bringing you more empowered conversations in the future. Stay strong. See you, Shaun. See you there.